The alarm begins ringing on your phone and awakens you from a dead sleep. Dear God, is that the alarm clock already? It's still dark outside. In that moment, the most beautiful idea imaginable is hitting the snooze button to gain just 10 more minutes of sleep. Maybe you'll do that once or twice, or maybe you will will yourself out of the bed. It would be nice to spend a few moments in quiet contemplation over a warm cup of coffee, but you have to get the kids ready for school. There's a load of laundry to get done and breakfast to make and lunches to pack. It's always hectic, but you get the kids up and out of bed and you get the food in their bellies and you check their homework and you get them out the door and on their way to school, and then you head off to work. You roll through the Starbucks drive-thru and arrive at work just a minute or two late, as always. It's a busy morning at work. Then it's lunchtime, and it would be so wonderful to enjoy a nice leisurely lunch, but really there's too much to do, so you just eat a sandwich at your desk. More coffee's required to get you through the afternoon. Your phone rings, you recognize the number. It's the school. One of the kids is sick again, and you're so relieved that grandma is able to nurse the sick one until you can get home. You leave work at 6, you're home by 7, you have to get dinner on the table, and then there's another load of laundry you need to do, and then there's a science project that's due tomorrow that requires your assistance. You finally get the kids in bed by 10 p.m., and you finally doze off to sleep around 1. The next day has some slight variations, but not really enough to mention. This is your life. Now, maybe your day looks a little different, but in all honesty, it still feels the exact same. You start at sunup, your phone starts ringing at sunup, and it doesn't stop until late into the evening. You are always on the go. It seems like you're always having to do things, and you seem like you're taxed to the max. And you feel like you're on a treadmill, and you just can't get off. We fantasize about something that might be a real thing for some, but for all we know, it might be as mythical as a unicorn. We fantasize about something called life balance. Balance between our work and our family and leisure time. What is leisure time anyway? Leisure time and rest. And we ask ourselves, is balance living even a possibility? Or is it just fantasy land? I've been researching life balance for years, and there are times when I achieve it, and it's like all of a sudden I'm the Dalai Lama. I have this peaceful grin on my face. I love everybody, and pieces of life just seem to be working out so wonderfully well. But then there are other times that balance is as elusive to me as anything, and I think, I don't know if I will ever feel the balance that I long to feel. Today we're going to talk about life balance, but before we talk about what life balance is, I want to share with you some things it is not, because I don't want you to be confused about the subject. Life balance is not having a perfect day every day. So when we talk about balance, just know that's off the table. Life has its own set of problems, and so even if you're balanced in your living, you're still going to experience some difficulties. Second thing, it's not devoting equal attention to every aspect of your life on a daily basis. Some people think, well, if we can only devote 8 hours to work, and then we will go home and we will devote 8 hours at home, and then we will devote 8 hours to sleep, and if we do that, then we'll have this thing knocked out. Listen, there are times in your life when your family life will take more than 8 hours. You be the primary caregiver to a child that is sick, and guess what? That becomes the priority. That takes precedence over all things. There will also be times in your life when, because of a work project or a new initiative, when 8 hours a day doesn't get it. I remember when we started the Village Church 25 years ago, I had set aside 6 months of knowing that we were going to have to really be just all in. We're going to have to be on it every single day. It was going to require enormous amount of time. And we launched the church. And a few weeks after we launched the church, my oldest son had a ruptured appendix go misdiagnosed. He was a week before he was actually put in the hospital. When he was put in the hospital, he had all kind of health issues. We didn't know if he was going to live or die. And suddenly all of that great work that I had planned to do for 6 months, guess what? It was all put on the back burner because for the next 6 weeks, we were in the hospital 24/7 taking care of him. So it's not always being able to get this even division of labor. It doesn't work like that. Third thing it's not fitting more things in your schedule. I don't want you to think that this talk is going to be so you can squeeze some more things into your life. It's not a magical cure, number 4, for all problems. Life can still be tough. Even for the person who lives with balance, it can still be tough. A fifth thing, and this is important, probably the most important thing, you can learn about life balance and practice life balance, but it's never permanent. I wrote a book on life balance several years ago titled The Tightrope Tango. And from the time I wrote it until now, Jane and I still have to sit down from time to time and review the lessons that I wrote about in the book, because our life gets all out of balance and we have to say, we got to pull it back together. We have to pull it back together. I have evolved on the subject. We used to call it work-life balance, as if you had work over here and you had to get work right, but then life was over here. Guess what I've discovered? Work is a part of your life. I prefer now calling it life balance. Neil Campbell, my business partner, he used an illustration that was good. He said some people, the work-life balance is kind of like lasagna, like you just have layers of pasta and meat, and life is just clear, organized just like that. But he said really life balance is like soup. It's just all these ingredients go in together and it just forms this wonderful, tasty, delicious soup. That's life balance. You know who Tony Hsieh is? I think the name maybe is familiar to some of you. He's the founder and CEO of Zappos. Great company. Many of you know who they are. They were bought for $1 billion by Amazon, but they still operate as a separate company and they still have this wonderful culture. Listen to what Tony Hsieh says. He says there are companies that focus on work-life separation or work-life balance. And at Zappos, we really focus on work-life integration. And at the end of the day, it's really just life. And especially if you spend so much time at work, you better enjoy the time that you're spending there and the people that you are there with. I hope you agree, balance is a worthwhile pursuit. And the first step towards balance is being able to recognize when you don't have it. If you are sitting there thinking, this is making me nervous, this is my life has no balance, then that is a great thing. The recognition that your life isn't working is an elementary stage, but it is absolutely critical before you're ever going to get healthy. And many people never have the wherewithal to recognize that their life is upside down and it is spinning entirely too fast. You can live an entire life in quiet desperation, and you can die without ever having grown into who you are uniquely meant to be. But if you've gotten to the point where you recognize this isn't it, then there is hope for you. Now, before we get to some of the practical to-dos for a balanced life, let me start by saying it won't happen until you make it a priority. You might want to write this down or take a picture of it. Balance is going to require an inner boss. You're going to have to be the inner boss for this to work. Because if you just treat it passively, it will kick your butt. And you will never get on top of it. When you realize your life is out of balance and unhealthy and not working for you, the next step is to get a little mad about it. You have to get mad enough that you are willing to focus on it and change it. What did Popeye say? That's all I can stands. I can't stands no more. So you have to get like that, where you say enough is enough. You're either a passive participant or you're an active change agent for the life that you want. Life only changes when we recognize something isn't right, and then we make a focused decision to make a change. Now, after that first step of recognizing it isn't working, the second step is taking charge and making the decisions to do things differently. You have to own it. You have to own it. And it's still going to be hard, because we say this all the time. Life change is hard. God's grace is free. God's acceptance is without any limitations. Life change takes you making some decisions and doing some things differently. Adult behavioral change is hard. It's hard for me, it's hard for you, it's hard for everybody, but it's worth it. Now, I need your help. Some of you have just been resonating with what I've been saying, and you think, my life is out of balance. And I need you to be brave for just a moment. I want you to be brave. But before you're brave, I want you just to smile, because you're about to do something that's going to be a little out of your comfort zone. So everybody smile. Everybody smile. Now you're willing to be brave? I want you to raise your left hand if you struggle with balance in your life. I want you to raise your left hand and hold it up just for a minute. All right, that's amazing. Hold it up. I just want you to hold it up because there's a point to this, so we got that. I'm proud for everybody in this room who held your left hand up. That is fantastic. Now, I want to ask you something else. If you make your bed every day, I want you to hold your right hand up. Now that you maybe only have one hand up, maybe you have two hands up, but if you make your bed every day, I want you to hold your right hand up. All right, you can put your hands down. Let me explain what that's all about. U.S. Navy Admiral William H. McCraven spoke to the graduating class of the University of Texas, and he told them this: if you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. It seems like such a nothing little thing, but he went on to explain how little things can shift into much bigger things in our life. This is what he said: if you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task and another and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. Now, if you were one of the few who had both hands up, most people had either this hand up or you had this hand up. But if you were one of the few that had both hands up, you're saying my life is out of balance, but I make my bed every day. I want to say bravo to you, because you are already doing one of the key things. You are taking charge of doing one thing you can do, and that's one of the keys when life is out of control. Take charge of something, and making your bed is something. Let me quickly give you some statistics about making your bed. 60,000 people took a survey online about whether or not they made their beds. According to the survey, 59% of the people don't make their beds every day. Only 27% make their beds, and another 12% are fortunate enough to have somebody make their bed for them. Here's what makes my little superficial point about bed making. And by the way, bed making, I've been all week saying, don't say bed wetting, bed making, because that's the point, bed making. Here's the point that makes bed making resonate hopefully deep within you. 79% of bed makers consider themselves to be happy in life. 79% of the people that make their bed say, yeah, I'm happy. Conversely, 62% of the people who don't make their beds consider themselves to be unhappy. Isn't that amazing? That small thing, it's profound. But even the exercise of the simplest thing of taking control can have a dramatic effect on your life. Now, is there more to it than just making your bed? Of course there is. And let me share with you 7 principles. We're going to talk about a couple of them today. We'll talk about most of them next week. But here's the principles we're going to discuss: sleep, margin, priorities, money management, physical health, emotional health, and flexibility. I'm going to talk about just 2 things today, and that's margin and sleep. But I'll start with sleep. Turn to your neighbor and tell them if you think you handle sleep well, or tell them you don't handle sleep well. Are y'all pretty good on the sleep thing? Tell somebody close to you, I got this sleep thing covered, or I don't do that very well. I can hear some of y'all are great at it. Some of you are great at it. Some of you, it's a real issue. People who study health and high achievement agree we need 8 hours of sleep every night. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter if you're different from everybody else in the world. All the medical research says at least 8 hours of sleep every night. The science has never been clearer that taking shortcuts on sleep does lasting damage to your emotional and your physical health, and getting fewer than 8 hours of sleep per night also shortens your lifespan. That's what all the science says. Sleep is far more important than we know. There's a guru of sleep research. He's 89 years old. His name's William DeMint. He's the founder of the Sleep Research Center at Stanford University. He's considered the leading authority on sleep, sleep deprivation, and the diagnosis and treatment of things like sleep apnea and narcolepsy. He is a brilliant man. This is what he said: we're beginning to realize that drowsiness or sleep deprivation and fatigue is beginning to outstrip alcohol as the cause of accidents in transportation, particularly on the highway. There are more accidents now on the highway because of sleep deprivation than there are driving under the influence. He also said sleep deprivation is the most common brain impairment people face. It causes us to do subpar work. It causes us to be argumentative. It causes us to be less loving and generally not capable of living our best lives. Remember the disciples on the boat? Jesus is sound asleep. He is cutting the Z's. He is relaxed and he is asleep. What are the disciples doing? They're wide awake because they're on the boat and the waves are turning a little bit and they're wide awake. They can't sleep when they're supposed to sleep. And then Jesus needs them at the end of his life to stay awake and to pray. Can you not pray with me just 1 hour? And what are they doing? They're cutting the Z's. They can't be awake when they need to be awake, and they can't be asleep when they need to be asleep. Here's a few suggestions from the experts about sleep. Stick to a sleep schedule of the same bedtime and wake-up time. Now, this may surprise you, but let's say you get up at 5:30 every morning, and then on the weekend you say, I'm going to sleep till 11. It's better if you get up like at least 6:30. It's better to get up within a 23 to 25 hour schedule of what you had gotten up the day before. All the experts say that helps you in a sleep system just to get up about the same time, go to bed about the same time. Second thing, practice a relaxing bedtime ritual. Maybe having some decaffeinated hot tea and turning the TV off and the internet off and maybe reading a book, but just some little ritual, maybe a hot bath, but something that you do every night as a preparation for bed. Number 3, if you have trouble sleeping, avoid naps, especially in the afternoon. Number 4, exercise daily. Vigorous exercise is preferred. 5, evaluate your sleep, where you're going to do your sleep. And I said this to some people earlier today. Do you know the experts say that ideal sleep temperature is 60 to 67 degrees? How many of y'all would like that, or that feels like a good temperature for y'all? I would love, that's perfect for me. I can't afford the air conditioning for 60 to 67 degrees. That would break the bank. I can't afford it. So we are getting used to like 72, 73. But whatever it is, find that way to make your room as comfortable as you can. If it means having some ambient noise or whatever it is, to let the room be perfect for you to be able to sleep. Number 6, use bright lights to help manage your circadian rhythms. Are you familiar with that term, circadian rhythms? That's your body clock. That means in the morning you want bright lights. You want to be bright through the day. And as you get closer to bedtime, my computer has a setting on it. My iPad has a setting on it. My phone has a setting on it. As I get closer to bedtime, my screen gets less bright. Because if you have bright, it has a tendency to keep you awake. Number 7, avoid alcohol, cigarettes, and heavy meals in the evening. Some people think alcohol helps you sleep. It'll help you go to sleep, but then you'll wake up 4 hours later, and it's not good for permanent sleep. It's not. So avoid alcohol, cigarettes, and heavy meals in the evening. Number 8, learn how to wind down. Turn the computers off, begin to wind down. And number 9, if you have a partner, experts suggest you should make love each night before bedtime. I really made that up, but I just put that in all the time. I just put that in because I just want to always, I'll make Jane listen to the CD or the tape of this, and so she'll just hear that every night. That's important. Now, even when life circumstances dictate imbalance in the other 16 hours of my day, I'm going to try to always give myself the life-sustaining gift of 8 hours of sleep. Y'all, you can't ignore it. I'm telling you, it'll make you grouchy. It'll make you hard to live with. You may be able to do it for a while, but it will take its toll on you and your relationships. When I give myself that 8 hours of sleep, I can handle so much more complexity in life. It is a much bigger thing for me to do. Now, another important ingredient in the balanced life is margin. And this is where I want to give you some Hebrew wisdom. Margin. Margin, if you're not familiar with what it is, it's the borders around the text on a page. Margin is breathing room. Margin is a little reserve that you're not using up. Margin is when you're not stretched to the limit. You're not going from one meeting to the next meeting to the next meeting with no space in between. Here's a good way to remember it. Margin is the space between my load and my limit. Margin is the space between my load and my limit. Dr. Richard Swinson, a physician and an author, he says it like this: the conditions of modern day living devour margin. If you're homeless, we direct you to a shelter. If you're penniless, we offer you food stamps. If you're breathless, we connect you to oxygen. But if you're marginless, we want to give you one more thing to do. Just want to always give you just one more thing to do. Marginless is the baby crying and the phone ringing at the very same time. Margin is grandma taking the baby for a whole afternoon. Marginless is being asked to carry a load 5 pounds heavier than you can lift. Margin is having a friend carry half the load. Marginless is not having time to finish the book that you're trying to read on stress. Margin is having the time to read the book twice. Marginless is fatigue. Margin is energy. Marginless, that's red ink. Margin, that's black ink. Marginless, that's hurry. Margin, that's calm. Marginless is our culture. Margin is counterculture, having some space in your schedule. Marginless is the disease of our culture. Margin is the cure. It's very important. Let me tell you what the opposite of margin looks like: filling every waking moment with activity. And some of y'all do that, and I'm guilty. I do that. Fill every moment of the day with activity. Now, I know some of you have extraordinary capacity, but you cannot redline your life for long before it will catch up with you. This living without margin makes you ripe for being out of balance. And you need to ask yourself, why do we have to schedule ourselves so thin? Why do we do that? There's something that's driving us. And listen, I did it for years and years, and I still fight it. I overcommit, and many of you do too. And I believe that the driver for most of us is fear. I think something deep down inside of us makes us fear that we might be missing out on something. If I don't go to everything, then I might miss something fun or good or wonderful. Or we have this fear of falling behind. If I don't overschedule, then people are going to get ahead and I'm going to fall farther behind. There's some fear inside of us, or there's a fear of not mattering. If I don't do all these things, then maybe my life won't be important. We're so progress-oriented, and many of us struggle here. And I know for much of my life, I was trying to prove that I was significant, and I would do that by trying to be the answer to everybody's question, whatever they needed. I can do. You're moving, I'll help you move. You need somebody to talk to you, I'll come and talk to you. You need somebody to do this, I'll come do this. You need somebody, I'll come do everything. I'll just schedule myself to death because I want to feel like I'm somebody. And if you say, Ray, thank you for coming and doing these things, and I felt good, but not for long. Our fear of not mattering much has the potential to draw us away from what matters most, which is a healthy, balanced life that God wants us to know. Now, does the Bible say anything about balance? Let me let you in on a little secret. You can't go to your concordance and look up balance and find the answers and say, oh, good, this is a verse on balance. But you can find some principles that are there that are brilliant, where it is these people on this spiritual journey learning how real life is supposed to be lived. There's 3 examples in the Old Testament. I'm going to hit them real fast, but I want you to get these 3 examples because it's important. The first is this little concept called Sabbath. The Jews had been slaves 400 years. They had lost all sense of what it means to be a human being. They were slaves. They worked all the time, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Whatever the master wanted, that's what they did. But now they have been set free, and God says, these are some commands. I want you to follow these. These are going to lead you into understanding what it means to be fully human. And one of these commands is you take 1 day a week, the Sabbath. It was Saturday. You take Sabbath and you rest. And the Jews were like, but we don't know how to do that. We work all the time. That's what we've done. Our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, all they do is work. And God says, but no more. You are my people. You will learn how to rest. I have a preacher that I really admire a lot, and he and his wife decided they would start practicing Sabbath. And for them, it was on Saturday mornings, they were going to just pretty much ban electronics. They were going to be together, and they were going to do things together differently that were replenishing and just relaxing for them. They said the first several weeks, they stared at each other like this is the stupidest thing we have ever tried to do in our lives. But then the rhythm began to click in. And suddenly life, they live for the Sabbath. You work hard, 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 and then you live for the Sabbath. Jane and I have been having discussions. We don't do this. We don't do this. And by the way, some people are a little bit more oriented in making the Sabbath Saturday. I think the principle is you need a day dedicated to rest. Rest, taking it easy. Jane and I are going to, we can't start this until the middle of October, but we're going to make Mondays the day. And I want you to hold me accountable on how this is working because I'm excited about it. What does it look like if we get up in the morning and we plan things that she and I can do together that are replenishing? We leave our phones on the table and we just go out and we just learn how to enjoy and relax. And I'm telling you, the first few weeks, we're going to probably not know what to do, but I bet it's going to become a rhythm for us that's beautiful. Second thing, Old Testament, Hebrew thought, the idea of a tithe. The idea, nobody had ever thought about this before, that you could put money aside. And by putting money aside, you were going to be okay. So they would put a tenth of their money aside. They would give it to the temple or they would give it to the priest. And that was a beautiful thing. And don't tense up. I'm not trying to talk about money today. I'm just talking about the idea that you could live without having to spend everything that you had, eat everything that you made. You were able to put some aside. And they put some aside, 10% for God and the temple service, but then they also would put things aside for their futures. The book of Proverbs talks often about how wise it is to be savers and being able to put things aside. One more thing I want to talk about, and I'll talk about it quickly, is the idea of gleaning, the law of gleaning. This was for the farmers, and this is so profound. Y'all, you want to see, this is people learning things at its very infancy that still is the most important things we could know. Listen to the law of gleaning from Leviticus chapter 19. These were the instructions to the people. When you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Do not go over your vineyard a second time or pick up the grapes that have fallen. Leave them for the poor and the foreigner. I am the Lord your God. What's he saying? Don't take everything to the limit. You don't have to go. If this is your field, if this is your field, you know what? Harvest here. Harvest here. You don't have to hit the corners and harvest the corners and get every inch of everything that you think is yours because you just have to live. So everything's got to be protected. And you cut. It's okay. It's okay. Take some space and leave it. Let the poor be blessed. Let the people who never get any kind of a help, let them have something that they can come and do. If you drop some food, leave it. Let some people have it. It's okay. You don't have to push things to the very edge. Deuteronomy 24 says this, when you're harvesting in your field and you overlook a sheaf, do not go back to get it. Leave it to the foreigner, the fatherless, and the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. Did you pick up on that little thought? You be generous and kind of leave the corners and don't worry about trying to fill every second of every minute of every day and just let God bless you. That's amazing. That's the wisdom of the book we're trying to learn about. That's brilliant. Then Jesus comes along and he takes it up a notch. He says, don't worry. What shall I eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? The pagans run after those things. Your heavenly Father knows you need them. Your heavenly Father knows you need them. Seek first God's kingdom And his righteousness and these things will be given to you as well. Margin in your life. Don't push so much. You don't have to. If I could give you 3 quick words, I would say this: stop the constant push for more. Stop the constant push for more. God loves you. You are worthy. You don't have to achieve a level for people to love you. God says you are worthy just like you are. Get that. As long as you confuse your worth with your work, you're going to be stressed out. Don't do that. I used to think if I wasn't the pastor, then I didn't have self-worth. It took me a long time to realize, no, I am worthy because God says I'm worthy. I just happen to get to do this on Sundays. But if I wasn't doing this on Sundays, I'm okay. I'm worthy. God says that I'm worthy. Learn contentment. Second thing is this: learn to say no. Hardest thing I've ever done, and I still struggle with it. Hardest thing. That's the $10,000 time management seminar in 2 letters. No. No. Somebody asks you to do something. God, I wish I could. My calendar won't let me. Wish I could, but my calendar won't let me. And you know what? They don't have to know what's on your calendar. Sometimes your calendar just needs to say, taking it easy. But it's on your calendar. I'm sorry, I can't. My calendar says I can't. Because you need to be able to say no. A lot of us, we're addicted to speed, performance. Every time we perform, every time we do something, it gives us a little jolt, gives us a little energy. It gets us going. It gets us. We can do this, but it eventually takes its toll. You have to learn to say, I don't know. No. We used to move everybody that ever moved would call Stephen Kelly and me, and we'd go move them. And now we're saying, our schedule, I'm sorry, I can't. It's time to get somebody else to help you move. That's okay. We say that, but then somebody in the church asks us and we all still go. But we that's our best hope we want to be that way. One final thing, learn to go slow. It's okay to go slow. Frantic is not good. And life doesn't happen in a day. I was this guy on a mission. I had to do things so fast, always so fast. I was 17 and wanted to be a preacher, and 19 when I started pastoring a church, and I'm just going. Who was I racing? My life was falling apart. Who was I racing? Ecclesiastes says this: God has made everything beautiful. I love this phrase, in its time. Learn to go slow. Learn to enjoy. Well, I want to close with a prayer that is a poem. And so I'm going to ask you to bow your heads, but I want you to listen to this. I think the words are important. Slow me down, Lord. Ease the pounding of my heart by the quieting of my mind. Steady my hurried pace with the vision of the eternal reach of time. Give me amidst the confusion of my days the calmness of the everlasting hills. Break the tension of my nerves with the soothing music of the singing streams that live in my memory. Help me to know the restoring power of sleep. Teach me the art of taking minute vacations, of slowing down, just to look at a flower, or pat a stray dog, or chat with an old friend, or make a new friend, or watch a spider build a web, or smile at a child, or just read a few lines from a good book. Remind me each day that the race is not always to the swift, and that there's more to life than increasing its speed. Let me look upwards through the branches of a towering oak and know that it grew great and it grew strong, because it grew slowly and it grew well. Slow me down, Lord. Slow us down, Lord. Give us margin, we all pray. in Jesus' name.